50 people were wearing something luxury where you can contextually identify that this is a relevant audience, but only 2 made a purchase. The question is, now Facebook is a machine learning platform. AI is the most powerful thing. Facebook asks you, send back some signals to me, like, was the audience that I've sent you was relevant or not? And most of the brands gonna send 2 signals. And in these signals, maybe some person was not even wearing other luxury brand. It was just some crazy person who just won in the lottery and decided to buy some unknown brand, which is not relevant, just random. One of the person was like maybe some girl around 20 years old. And now Facebook thinks that, okay, probably we should build machine learning algorithm based on these 2 signals and bring you more customers like this.
I'm really excited to have a discussion around media mix optimization with you and all the great work that you're doing at SegmentStream. In the marketing measurement landscape today, there are a lot of challenges that we're trying to solve for, and a lot of software solutions are trying to solve for. You mentioned a few that SegmentStream is working on, but I'd love to hear from your perspective. When you look at the measurement landscape, what are the systemic challenges that you're really seeing marketers plagued by, and you're working on solutions for at SegmentStream?
Yeah, so I would say digital marketing is a very dynamic space, but it's so dynamic that for some advertisers, it's quite challenging to adapt to how quickly everything changes. Like yesterday, you can track everyone, you can know exactly which websites are visited. Tomorrow you have different legal regulations, you have different technical restrictions, and it's very hard to adopt, especially when you learn to do something, you learn about different terms like multi-touch attribution. Like you have understanding what is multi-touch attribution, and even though this term is very, very broad, and if you go to Wikipedia, you're going to see that it's a very broad term. And in a sense, MMM falls into MTA, like many different approaches fall to MTA. But at some point, it became very, very narrow. And now people consider MTA being something like a conversion that is stitched back using cookies, and now you can assign credit to every single touch point, and that's it. The same with incrementality measurement, the same with MMM, like all this, the same with ROAS. So many people say ROAS, while they in reality mean some metric which is reported in some platform, which has nothing to do with real ROAS. And I would say the biggest challenge is to adopt and to leave all the old stuff that is not working behind, and to open up to something new that can really help you solve real challenges.
And when you think about that, I think there's a lot of challenges with attribution and cross-device tracking, the deprecation of cookies, essentially less data for marketers to work with, right? And as I think about it, as a marketer who's responsible for managing a 7-figure media mix, I have to leverage multiple data sources to make decisions around where to deploy that capital to essentially grow the business as efficiently as possible, right? Now, the decisions that I make are based on the measurement lens in which I'm looking at the channels. And logically, I will make certain decisions based on that measurement that could stray me down a wrong course. I'm wondering what your perspective is on that when you talk to brands, when you talk to marketers, given the current attribution landscape, right? Like what are the negative implications of making decisions based on that data?
Yeah, so this is exactly the topic I've started. So we have a lot of different, I would say, legacy measurement approaches. And all of those measurement approaches have names. Marketing mix modeling, like multi-touch attribution, etc. But there are so many approaches, and one of the approaches that we use, this approach doesn't have a name, right? There is no name invented yet. It's not a market standard. And probably what you're talking about with different lenses is when you apply multiple legacy solutions to be able to see like what reality is. And a good analogy will be, imagine you're currently in Dubai and you're looking for the coordinates of San Francisco, where you would love to like run your company and make a startup. And you don't have a good GPS, and you start like this very popular word right now, triangulation. And you take 3 GPS which are not working well, and one GPS says that San Francisco is actually in China. Another GPS says that San Francisco is actually in New York. And the third one says it's actually in Africa. And you do this triangulation, different lenses, and you end up in Cyprus. And you continue building your startup in Cyprus, but for some reason, like it doesn't scale and there is no proper environment for this startup. So my approach is different. Like it might be controversial, but I'm against all these triangulations with different approaches and different lenses. My idea is to test and to fail. So first of all, go to China and figure out that China is not San Francisco. Figure out this fast. Like in 3 days, probably you will be able to figure this out. Then go to Africa, figure out that Africa is not San Francisco as well. Then go to New York. It's better, but definitely not San Francisco. And finally, you will find San Francisco. After like these 3, 4, 5 tests and trials, you will be in San Francisco. And even though you might be losing like 2 or 3 months to figure out where San Francisco is, but you're not going to be stuck in Cyprus, right? So this is my approach to this to this methodology.
That's funny. You know, I have to push back a little bit because from my perspective, marketers are running their budget based on existing paradigms, and that's gotten them so far. And so there are objectively thousands of businesses that are still running their media mix primarily based on last touch and they've been able to scale with that paradigm, even though that measurement has its flaws, right? This was our case where prior to iOS 14.5, we were operating primarily based on last touch. We had, we had our CAC targets and our high level revenue targets that we were hitting. We were still making channel level decisions based on last touch, and we were doing good enough. iOS 14.5 kind of shifted that. We adopted incrementality testing. We started to do some different things. Now we're adopting and now we have this mix where we'll go into a Monday meeting. We'll say, okay, this is how much we spent. This is how many customers we got. This is how much revenue we got. This is our CAC, this is our ROAS. And then within each of the channels, we have last touch attribution we're making decisions on. Sometimes we have some incrementality tests from a given channel we're making decisions on. We're going to start to have more and more results that we're making decisions on. And when I think about triangulation, I think about like, how am I directing the ship and how am I looking at all these different data points to direct in the right way? So, and then, to your point, perhaps all that is wrong. Perhaps that type triangulation is getting me to not a definitive answer. If that is the case, how do marketers, adopt something that's a completely new paradigm, right?
Yeah. So the idea is that like, I personally really love last touch, and it depending on the scale of the business, it still may work for you, but problems start when you start to scale. And at some point you reach like maximum that you can in Google Ads, in paid search, in all the like so-called lower funnel channels where you still can observe these signals. And those signals are quite fine, like quite deterministic. At least you have some correlation between the click and the conversion. So problems start when you start scaling, when you start investing millions, for example, 500K or million per month. So this is when the problem starts. And last click with last click, you still can reach local maximum. So you can play quite safe and you can still reach some local maximum. With triangulation, on the other hand, you might not even reach local maximum. You might reach somewhere in Cyprus. Like with last touch, you can reach and settle in New York and do quite well, even though little bit further is San Francisco. But with triangulation, you can get some absolutely misleading results. It's like with misleading numbers of averages. Like when people say that many years ago, people lived, like average age of people was something lower than 30 years, right? And everyone says, okay, so it means that everyone was sick, everyone was dying, and most of the people were dying. So the perception is that everyone was dying before 30. But the reality is that like most of mortality was related to children before even reaching 5 years old. While anyone who reached 5, like most of the people who reached 5, sometimes lived till 80 because it was like a filtering mechanism of the evolution. But the perception is that like people were old at 30 and then they died. The same with so this is the problem of all the averages. And I would say our approach was to find an absolutely new way to zoom out from all existing approaches, like zoom out and look at the problem from absolutely different angle. How can we properly measure the impact of our ads, and how can we properly optimize them to reach maximum revenue? And I can give you maybe another metaphor. Imagine you decided to create a brand new luxury jewelry brand, and you opened your shop in the center of New York, and you start running your ads. And no one is, so some people still come into your shop, but you decided to start testing different channels. So you put, I don't know, 500K into Facebook ads, and you see that 100 people actually came into your store. And out of these 100 people, 50% were actually wearing something else luxury from other luxury jewelry. On some of them, you've seen Cartier, on some of them Bulgari, some of them were wearing Hermes shoes, some of them were wearing Balenciaga, doesn't matter. And after all, like you analyze, like you've just invested 500K, so these people come 100 people, but only 2 people made a purchase. So 100 people came to your store, 50 people were wearing something luxury where you can contextually identify that this is a relevant audience, but only 2 made a purchase. The question is, now Facebook is a machine learning platform, AI is the most powerful thing. Facebook asks you, send back some signals to me, like, was the audience that I've sent you was relevant or not? And most of the brands gonna send 2 signals. And in these signals, maybe some person was not even wearing other luxury brand. It was just some crazy person who just won in the lottery and decided to buy some unknown brand, which is not relevant, just random. One of the person was like maybe some girl around 20 years old. And now Facebook thinks that, okay, probably we should build machine learning algorithm based on these 2 signals and bring you more customers like this. And Facebook starts bringing more customers like this, but those are irrelevant because this like segment was so small and you were so focused on they need to buy immediately. So that eventually you ruin your whole marketing and you ruin algorithms of Facebook. What SegmentStream proposes instead, stop focusing on conversions at all. Conversions don't matter. Your money in the bank matter, after all, in the certain period of time when you test different hypotheses. If you see that like 50 people wearing other luxury brands whom you like qualified as relevant audience, who came to your store, they asked about the product, they asked about your brand, they asked different questions about different jewelries. Someone brought their wives and they told that they're the wedding and they're looking for some brand, but they feel hesitant on buying a brand. So all of these people, you have 50 people who were qualified by you somehow based on either their behavior or different contextual features. If you're gonna send 50 signals back to Facebook and scale your budget, Facebook will bring you much more people like this. And at some point, the model of Facebook will be trained. And at some point in the long term, more and more people of your relevant audience gonna know about your brand. And at some point, your revenue gonna grow. So this is our approach, and it's quite simple. And what was required is just to zoom out from these approaches, like let's focus on conversions that happen immediately whenever we launch something. Instead, focus on whether it was relevant audience or not relevant audience, and measure everything only based on this.
Right. And that is the very unique, one of the unique differentiators to what you're doing. And what you're referring to is what you call AI-powered visitor scoring, where we're not looking at the conversion, we're looking at the visit or the session and the quality of that visit or session, right? And then you're doing modeling on top of that to understand, based on the quality of that visitor session, what is the probability of that customer to convert or to turn into revenue.
Yeah, or at least whether this was relevant traffic, well-targeted traffic, traffic that was really interested in the product you offer, or it was some random traffic who just clicked, or it was some bot traffic or some irrelevant customer. Because especially when it comes to display, so like with paid search, like you still have some terms. Sometimes you might have like misleading terms, but in most cases, like you already have intent. But when it comes to display and paid social, like all of these activities are in a sense display, people can just like the catchy ad. So this like clickbait ad, it's like really nice. It's a really beautiful picture of very beautiful girl advertising a specific product, and they just wanted to click. But once they clicked and once they saw prices on the website in your luxury brand shop, they immediately ran away with the confusion. And our goal is to identify this. So instead of making black and white based on whether this customer purchased straight away, we make all these shades of gray between black and white to identify like who was relevant, who was the most relevant. And this way our clients can define the threshold themselves, like what is the relevancy. And then they can build both their attribution and also media mix optimization and also smart bidding optimization based on these signals.
I want to get into the scoring system a little bit. I do wonder, because that data is based off a visit, how do you solve for the challenge of view-based traffic?
This is another very interesting topic about a view-based. Like if you run your ads, even if those are upper funnel, like if those are display and videos, if your ads do not generate any clicks, this is a signal. This is already a signal. And what I've seen with most of our customers for who we've run many incrementality tests as well, because our platform also supports incrementality testing, geo-holdout testing, that in many cases, upper funnel campaigns that don't generate clicks with engaged audience are usually not incremental. So one of the last clients who've run POC with us, and finally they trusted us and they were able in 2 months to increase revenue from 1.5 million pounds to 2.3 million pounds. They were running a lot of ads in DV360. And then we measured the traffic that was coming. So last click was showing 0. DV360 interface itself was showing hundreds and hundreds post-view conversions. We've measured the quality of the traffic. And our assessment was like, there is no quality traffic at all. Like people spend like few seconds, they're not interested in the product. Most of them come with some strange IP addresses, countries, etc. So we measured like, okay, incrementality of this channel, like they invest like, so our assessment based on our approach was like also 0. Like 0, sorry, there is no engaged traffic. Most of the traffic is just some bot traffic that immediately bounces. And then we launched incrementality test, and incrementality test also showed 0. So what happens with this post view that everyone is so obsessed with? And like some people even include this in optimization. For example, Facebook allows you to use like 7 days post-click, but Facebook also allows you to use like 7 days post-click, 1 day post-view. So what is the problem with this, and where is the biggest like misleading thing in this? All these platforms have pixel on your website. All of them track your existing audience. And the issue is whenever someone comes to your website from Google, from your organic search, from the channels that really drive incrementality, these pixels like DV360 pixel, Facebook pixel, they immediately pick up this audience. Like, oh, this is a tasty audience, this probably will convert. And they immediately start, like not tomorrow, they immediately start showing ads to this audience again and again and again. And then there are some conversions and they show, okay, this is a post-view conversion. And we are responsible for this conversion because we showed an ad and eventually user converted. You don't see any traffic from these ads. You don't see any quality traffic of these ads. So the users already made up their mind, and in many cases, they might be already purchasing by that time. But these platforms just show you these post-view conversions, which in a sense you can perceive as retargeting. So it's super lower lower funnel conversions. And in many cases, they are not incremental, even though, like, for example, we ourselves run a lot of retargeting campaigns, but because we are B2B when we promote content, etc. But in many cases, for e-commerce, for B2C brands, like if your retargeting campaigns drive clicks, yes, you return customers back to website. Sometimes it's incremental, sometimes not. Usually incrementality is not that high that it's compared to what is reported in your last click, but at least there is some incrementality in these retargeting activities. What we've seen with post-view, in most cases, it's not incremental. I'm not saying that it's always the case, but in most cases. And most of the upper funnel activities that are really incremental, that really drive value, we still are able to measure them based on customer behavior. Because like upper funnel means that you can reach wider audience, much cheaper, much broader. And like if in Google search you have really high CTR, maybe in those campaigns with upper funnel you have much lower CTR, but you still have a huge volume of clicks with lower CTR, with lower engagement, but we still capture this engagement and we understand whether someone was interested or not. If there was no valuable behavior at all, in most of the cases, I doubt about incrementality.
Understood. That makes sense. And then what about for channels that do not have a click?
Yeah. Of course, there are some channels that like made in a way that there is no click possible at all, like TV, for example, or like podcast we are recording right now. So those channels are different. I'm not talking about those channels. And these channels should be measured differently. Of course, there are many different methodologies, but right now I'm talking about mainstream belief that like Facebook ads, display ads, YouTube ads are really driving incrementality while there are zero clicks. So in this concept, I don't believe at all.
Understood. Yeah, and I think that is something that there might be skeptics around. To me, it's a spectrum, right? Like to me, there's certain mediums where you can leverage the click-based data to learn more about the quality of the traffic while making an assumption that there will be some incremental nature of traffic that comes in beyond the click. But your thesis is still very much based on visitor quality.
Yeah, there is still some fraction, and for sure, like there is some fraction who clicked. But I mean, if you see a channel where there are no visitors, or there is, for example, you invest there like 50% of your budget in YouTube and brand awareness, but based on visit scoring, you see that like there are 10, 5, 15 conversions. Of course, we always have this, because it's still predictive, we still have some margin of error. It can be, let's say, even plus 100% or plus minus 100%. It can be wide like error margin. But still, when you do make decisions in your budget allocation, you still should play within this margin. You cannot play within margin like 100,000%. We cannot be 100,000% incorrect. But I see a lot of brands who allocate their budget this way and they still believe in brand awareness. And so for me, like if someone was not even interested to check out what the product is, so probably it was irrelevant. They were watching their favorite podcast on YouTube and they just waited 3 seconds to skip your ad. Like they just hated this, but they don't want to pay £10 a month and not to see ads.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Let's talk a little bit about your scoring system, right? So you assign a probability score of 0 to 1 to every visit based on engagement and intent. What does that system look like?
So in a sense, like first of all, we can call it in a sense single visit attribution. Of course, when we can stitch everything, we do a lot of work in terms of stitching still. We still stitch everything that is possible based on cookies, based on user ID, especially for software as a service businesses. We stitch a lot based on IP address when users give consent to collect their IP address. We also have methodologies how to solve the biggest problem, I would say, in upper funnel is in-app browser. When most of the like Instagram, LinkedIn, X, for some reason they don't open Safari when you click on the ad. They don't open Chrome. Instead of that, they open their in-app browser, and people just browse, like view a few pages, and then they switch to default browser. And some people say, "Oh, this is not not the case, like this small fraction of users. Actually, we've analyzed, and it's like sometimes in Facebook, it's up to 25% of users who actually start their journey inside Facebook in-app browser and then switch to Safari. So it's already like 25% that can be restored, and we can stitch it back. So we stitch whatever is possible to stitch, but still, like everyone is talking about identity graph, like it was working a long time ago when third-party cookies existed, and LiveRamp made a fortune in this. But this is not the case. And even with everything that we are able to stitch, we stitch like small fraction, like maybe 1%, 5% of users with all these things, like only when people give consent, of course. But after that, like what to do with like 95 or 99% of sessions that we are not able to stitch. So in a sense, we use this data that we are able to stitch to pre-train some model that can recognize behavioral patterns that eventually lead to conversion, because there are still some conversions that happen within the stitched customer journeys. And then we have algorithms how to extrapolate this knowledge and these patterns to all the traffic that was not possible to stitch. And in a sense, it's like a single visit analytics. Whenever click happens on a website, we analyze customer behavior, and at the end of the session, you already have a score. So it means like there are no problems with cookies here, because within one session, cookies always consistent. It's one session. This session is essentially built based on cookies. So for one session, you always have a traffic source, and it's impossible to lose it. So that's why we create conversion immediately after the visit end, and we immediately attribute it to the traffic source. This way, like you have like hundreds of millions of clicks, and for every single click, at the end of the visit, we give a score from 0 to 1. And depending on the score, like, and after, for example, 1 week or 1 month, you have the scores assigned for every single click, for every single channel. And then we take total number of conversions you have during 1 week or 1 month, and now we redistribute those proportionally to the scores that was assigned to every visit. And this way you have like this view and assessment how your channels perform.
Right. It's such a unique system, and it's so different.
Yeah.
Do you know any other software company or anybody else who's working on something like this?
No, not at the moment. And there are so many pitfalls, because the biggest pitfall is like how to train this machine learning model, because there is no data to train. Because like in ideal world, you have all these beautiful customer journeys that are stitched together, and you can train machine learning model based on consistent data. But we have fragmented data. We have incomplete data. And this is one of the biggest machine learning challenges, to train a good model that solves business challenges based on incomplete data. So at the moment, I don't know any other solutions that use this approach. And from one side, this is an advantage. From another side, it's a challenge, because as I've mentioned, like marketers, they stick to the past. When they go to Google, they search to multi-touch attribution. They search for, and at some point, like we bid in Google Ads, if you search for multi-touch attribution, you will see SegmentStream. If you search for MMM, you will see SegmentStream. And on our website, we really struggled, like what should we put? Because sometimes like there is a big company, and like strategic management tell them we finally need to implement multi-touch attribution to solve upper funnel problem. And they go to the website, oh, it's not multi-touch. So, but we are looking for multi-touch attribution. So we started putting, okay, it's in a broader term, it's a multi-touch attribution. If you look in Wikipedia, what we are doing is a multi-touch attribution, because multi-touch attribution is assigning a credit to every single marketing touch point. And this is exactly what we do. The only difference is that we assign this credit not based on conversions.
Right. It's predictive based on the model that you kind of explained earlier. I want to go back to the Facebook example, because I thought that was really interesting. So, and I think, you know, you've been kind of clear. The use cases for this are, you know, much more based on traffic sources that has a click or visit component to them. And this is where we should focus. So let's take Facebook, for example. I'm running a Facebook campaign. I'm targeting a broad audience, and I have a couple of different options on what I can bid towards, what I want Facebook to find. I might say, okay, I'm going to optimize towards a purchase. You mentioned that what happens is that I can serve a number of impressions the Facebook might find the two purchases that I capture, infer some things about what type of audience that I'm looking on based on the unique attributes of those purchases. And then it'll go out and find me more of those folks. But there's challenges there because what if there's some randomness to that, right?
And another challenge in machine learning is also can be overfitting. Like you have these two really good signals that purchased and you overfitted your model. Right now, it's not good in predicting other purchases because it's overfitting based on two signals.
Now, the other option and the one that we're exploring a little bit more now is to optimize off of predicted LTV, which is to say that we assign a predicted lifetime value to a individual conversion. And then we send Facebook that data, and then we're trying to maximize our ROI based on that, which is still based on the purchase event kind of happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, can I comment on this on LTV?
Sure, please.
So yeah, let's get back to our metaphor with you opening a luxury brand. So imagine like you have these two customers and now you have only two signals that you can send to Facebook and you're already overfitting the model. It means you say, I only want girls of 20 years old and also also everyone who wins the lottery. I want only these people. But now you go even further into overfitting. Now you say, okay, conversions are not enough for me. I want to optimize for LTV. And now you like assess, okay, this guy who won in the lottery purchased just once, but this girl, she came again. And now you like essentially say you are discriminating this guy and sending Facebook more like a stronger signal based on LTV that we predict that LTV for this girl will be higher. We want more people like this. So first of all, you overfit algorithms of Facebook based on sending only like purchases that happen. And then you overfit it even more that based on these purchases that tracked by last click, you send LTV, which is even more random. And when I say random, in your past data, it's not random. It's a fact. It's a fact that these people like have high LTV and these people have low LTV. But the amount of data compared to the audience that Facebook possesses is very small. So it means that you can train your model really well based on past data, but it will perform really poorly based on the future data. So this is a main principle of overfitting. And we see these problems all over the place when we, even like bigger companies, bigger startups run incrementality tests. So why we decided to create our own incrementality testing? There were companies out there that specialize on incrementality testing, geo-holdout testing, etc. But they come into the same trap. They do overfitting. They choose control market with like small number of conversion. Then they apply like coefficients to build synthetic group. And now the synthetic group is pretty aligned with the historical data, but it's overfitted. And then it's very inaccurate and very bizarre in the predicting future. So LTV, we have an approach for predicted LTV, and probably it will not fit into this podcast. Maybe we will make a second episode focusing on businesses because for me, like the most interesting, because for e-commerce, everything is simple. Like we even have self-serve pricing plans for e-commerce that work out of the box. It's super simple business. So no discrimination, but like in a sense, e-commerce is very simple. You have traffic, you have a conversion happens immediately, everyone is happy. But with lead generation businesses and with software as a service businesses like fintech, it's an absolutely different story. It's like we don't even propose self-serve pricing plans for such businesses because those businesses are very complex. They have really huge offline component and not all leads are made equal. And you need to make this distinguishment between leads. But applying LTV based on last click conversions is very dangerous because it can overfit machine learning models of Facebook and Google, etc. And it should be another approach should be applied that we can talk about maybe next time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also one of the challenges with predicted LTV is that you are making a number of assumptions on the cross-sell rates, the retention of a given customer when you have a longer sales cycle or longer revenue cycle of when you're actualizing that revenue. And so there's a lot of challenges with that. To speak to your platform specifically, instead of optimizing towards a purchase and giving that data to Facebook, what you're basically saying is we can send them conversion data that's based on the visitor scoring. Can you kind of walk through what that looks like technically, specifically for Facebook? Because I think that's a really interesting use case.
Yeah, so this approach is applicable for some clients. For some clients, it's not applicable. So if you opened your jewelry store and at some point you have not 100 people coming to your store, but like thousands and thousands, and now you have like at least 1,000 people who actually purchased. Those were not just wearing like jewelry, etc. They actually made a purchase. You already have enough data, enough strong signal, and you can send this data to Facebook, and you can be sure that like when you have at least like 100 conversions per week in a campaign, probably you are not overfitting the algorithm. Algorithm of Facebook is really good in picking up signals. So this approach is applicable for businesses that have their Facebook campaigns and they see like 5-10 of course you should remove post view. You should remove it, of course. Never train smart bidding on post view, but imagine you removed post view from Facebook and now you have like 15 conversions and you understand that now you're overfitting. But you don't want to optimize for website clicks, because I've mentioned website clicks can be just clickbait. Like, oh, it's a nice ad. Let's make like more beautiful ad, more catchy ad, and people are gonna click. It doesn't necessarily lead to high quality traffic.
Or another option, just to interrupt you. So instead, you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of conversion volume. You could create a custom conversion of like, I only want to go after people that have spent X amount of time on site. Or you could create these things in Tag Manager to kind of like optimize towards a more engaged visitor in a sense. So that is an option. But it seems like what you're doing is a more sophisticated, advanced kind of, based on that. Yeah.
I can go into this topic very deep, like especially when we see how people decide. Like, first of all, you need to make a decision. Like, how many minutes should your customer spend on the website so that you identify them as qualified? And do you know how most of the people pick up this number?
No.
They just go into Google Analytics and they see like average duration on the website. And here we're coming back to the like flaws of average numbers, like with these people who like most of the people die before reaching 5 years, while others actually live till 80. So in reality, you can pick up like this number, but in reality, this is just average. It might be that most of the people who spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 100 minutes on your website are those just who forgot to close their tab in Google and just started browsing for another website, while another portion of users can be just bot traffic. And you again like having this triangulation and you land in the wrong spot, both not filtering bad traffic and not filtering good traffic. So in a sense, like for human, it's very hard to pick up this number. And this approach is quite valid, like how many minutes someone spent, like how many pages. And like for businesses who don't have budget and when not millions of dollars are at stake, this might be a viable approach for some businesses that invest like $5,000 a month and they still growing. For SegmentStream, it's a viable approach because we ourselves cannot build machine learning models based on our data because we don't have enough data. So unfortunately, we cannot use our own technology on our website properly. But the main idea that there are many non-linear patterns. There might be some users who spent 8 minutes on the website and browsed only 2 pages, but they did specific actions. They viewed contact page, they browsed on the fashion store and they browsed all images. Or there are some visitors who spent like, I don't know, I know from my girlfriend that some women spend like hundreds of hours on a fashion store website just adding something to wish list and looking for references they want then to buy somewhere else. So there are many patterns that are misleading and might not lead to the conversion. With machine learning, we can feed algorithm with hundreds of signals, with hundreds of events, with hundreds of contextual features, and figure out like all these nonlinear patterns that eventually lead to conversion. So I would say this is the same approach, but a little bit more sophisticated.
Sure, and explain that technically, right? So how does that work in Facebook?
What exactly?
The bidding and optimizing based on your SegmentStream visitor scoring.
Imagine you run your Facebook ads and you don't observe enough final conversions. Maybe you have very complex product, expensive product. This product takes time to evaluate. Or for B2B, the most complex thing when there are many decision makers. One comes and makes a decision while another one makes a purchase. So it's not even possible to connect this. So someone clicks on your ad and they start browsing your website. They start reading about your product. They start reading description. Like they do all the research. They maybe download some brochures. Maybe, I don't know. They do all these things that usually people who are really interested in the product do. And then they leave your website without a purchase. But Facebook needs this signal. So at the end of the session, we create a synthetic conversion. It's not real conversion, it's synthetic conversion that we called like modeled purchase or whatever. And then we use conversions API, like server to server, and immediately, like whenever the visit is ended, we immediately send it back to Facebook so that Facebook could start optimizing immediately to bring in you more customers like this.
Is that data only for visitors that have a score of a certain percent, a certain number?
Yeah, it's possible to set up in the platform. So we usually set up the threshold to make sure that we are not overfitting the algorithm of Facebook, but also that we don't send like low quality signals. So it's always a balance between the volume, the number of signals we send, and the quality of these signals. So we need to find this perfect balance where we're not overfitting the model, but at the same time, we're not sending low quality signals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's such a challenge in paid marketing. And even, when you're managing a multi-channel mix and you're making bets and you're trying to pull budget in a bunch of different ways. This happens every quarter, Constantine, where we'll go through the planning process and we'll say, we're on 12 channels right now. We want to test these 17 things and we have X amount of budget to do it. And you're like, well, okay, we actually need to only test 3 because we just don't have enough to spread across all these different areas. And so there's this constant balancing act of, I want to learn as much as possible, but I also want to give each thing enough to get appropriate learning and then also give it enough data to optimize off of.
This brings us back to like triangulation. You can like spread a little bit everywhere, or you can like all into China and you figure out, okay, China doesn't work. Then you all in New York doesn't work. And finally you will find a channel, because the problem, like I've seen this a lot among new clients, they have really like huge amount of channels. And like if we look at, like we have this feature in the platform, not to see conversions, but also see like percentage of revenue this channel brings. And they have like maybe 50 different channels and everywhere like 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%. And then like we already can measure this because we measure traffic quality. So this is already good enough, but also we have one step forward so that some of our advertisers can do. We can also calibrate this attribution. So we can run geo-holdout test. And if we see that, like you've mentioned, that there might be post-view effect, we might be wrong, like margin of error can be like plus 100%, minus 100%. So we want to run additional assessment for them, but we cannot, because when the channel has like 1% incrementality, like there is no way to run a test because this incrementality will be indistinguishable. It will be just statistical noise. Like, and we've seen so many, like, for example, across US, like US is the best in terms of like all other countries are much worse, but in US, at least you have states, you have many big cities, you can still find some regions which are similar to each other. For example, compared to UK, it's crazy. Like London, what you're going to compare to London? Like, okay, very hard to find like something similar. But for example, in the US, it's possible. But even within US, like for most of the tests, even with really big advertisers who spend like $1 million a month, minimal detectable effect of incrementality is 5%. It means that like when your assumption is that your channel is less than 5% incremental, there is no way to measure it. It will be just statistical noise. So my idea is like usually my advice to companies that really want to understand incrementality and then invest across Snapchat, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook, like DV360, etc. Just pool all the budget and make a firm decision like what they want to test. If it's TikTok, go all in TikTok. If it's Facebook, go all in Facebook. Run, fail. But the problem is that most people don't want to fail, because in some companies, failure is considered to be a bad thing. While in my opinion, in marketing, failure is an amazing thing. Even if you run incrementality test and it doesn't show like statistical significance on incrementality, at least you know that this channel is not incremental. You can move on from China to New York. But most of the people like perceive like this diversification across channel as safe, when in reality they keep wasting money for 1, 2, 3 years. Yes, it's not visible, but at some point business stops growing.
Yeah, I mean, I consider diversification to be a requirement and important, but there is, like anything else, a spectrum of diversification, and there is such thing as being too diversified. I was literally listening to a YouTube short that Warren Buffett was talking about how many times in his investing career, more than, I think he said 70% of his portfolio was in a single stock. Now, that doesn't mean that 100% of his portfolio was in a single stock, but that means that he had conviction in one thing.
That's why he is so successful, because he has a skill. Like diversification is fine. You can play like everyone else. You can be average. If the goal of your company to be average, like S&P 500, like that's fine. You can be average. You can just play safe, like $100 across all channels. But if you want to be like Warren Buffett, you need to get a skill. You need to understand what really works, what really doesn't work. So all this knowledge, like about post view, we've got this knowledge just because we failed many times. Because like the hardest thing in building product like ours, like the hardest thing, it's not about like writing code. It's about understanding what works, what doesn't work. Because like we started developing our product in 2013, and like imagine like we come up with this algorithm, and there should be some crazy client who will trust us with their budget to test this algorithm. And we need 2, 3, 5, 10 clients. We need to fail many times before we're gonna find what works now. Like, okay, now for most of the clients, we connect them, and in most of the cases, like everything is perfect, like revenue is growing. But it took us more than 10 years to fail many times. Many clients who churned because of this, just because like we didn't know ourselves many things. But our culture is not to act safe. We don't act safe. We want to find the truth. We want to find the truth, and at some point to find an approach that will work for most of the advertisers. And we are really grateful to all our clients who work with us already for 5, 6 years. Like we're really grateful for them, because we had our ups and downs in terms of like testing, but we agreed together that we want to test it.
I would love to chat with you about investment philosophy, probably offline, because I think you have some interesting thoughts, and I'd love to chat about it. To close out the podcast now, though, I think I want to just ask one more question, which is a bold one. What is your long-term vision for SegmentStream?
Long-term vision is to become like, this is not an accident when I told you about like luxury brands, etc. So the idea is like our platform is not for everyone. So I would say when we talk about apparel, you have Zara, you have United Colors of Benetton, but also you have, I don't know, you have Hermes, where you are not even allowed to buy something, or you have Ferrari, where you are not able to buy Ferrari because like you need to understand what Ferrari is, and you can buy like used one, but you cannot buy a new one. So in a sense, we've tested, like we've spent a lot of time to find our perfect ICP, perfect client profile. And we understood this profile. We want clients who are as passionate as we are about finding the truth, growing their business, not being worried about being fired because they made a mistake. But when we finally, at some point, like when we reach these clients and finally like we have some really amazing clients who come to this journey with us. So actually we want at some point all these ambitious startups, companies who want to grow and who don't want to settle in being average to become our clients. And this is our long-term vision.
I love it. Constantine, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.